Would anybody like to jump in with a question? Because I think it would be nice to also make sure it's relevant for all of you. So if you have a question, please jump in.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to ask,
Sure.
what is the right age for young girls to decide to freeze their eggs?
Dr. Radhika, do you want to take this? Right age.
There's no right age per se, so sooner the better. Because when a girl is younger, so let's say 35 under, the egg number, egg quality would be better. It also depends on, so if it doesn't mean that if you're 37, 38, you can't think of egg freezing, but the outcomes are better if you freeze them when you're young. Also, it doesn't guarantee a pregnancy because there are many other factors that determine pregnancy. So it depends upon the future partner's sperm, the uterine health, and other parameters too. But again, better the egg quality, better the chances. And for better egg quality, younger the age when you freeze them, better overall better outcomes.
Overall, we are seeing 28 to 32 as being sort of a good age. And I think between 30 to 35 is when most women are sort of exploring, is what we've seen as a good age to sort of plan.
So, my question has come from, I've got two daughters, 23 and 25. And they are at an age, when they're exploring, they're looking at, building their careers.
Correct.
So I just want to know, and that is my prime reason to have come here today.
Yeah.
So, and right now the marriage is not in the horizon at all for them at this point in time. So is this a good time for them at an age of 25, 27? Is it right? Should they do it, or should they wait for a few years and then think about it?
My personal opinion would be, they have a few years. They can wait for maybe 2-3 years. Then to get an AMH test done, find out where their quality of eggs are. If it is something which is not a concern, they can wait maybe another 2-3 years till they are 30, 31.
Yeah.
If by then they have not found a partner in life that they're ready to have a child with, certainly go ahead and do egg freezing. Because then you have protected yourself. You may meet somebody at 35 that you want to get married.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think they still have a little bit of time at 25 would be my personal opinion.
And I think the AMH value is a very good indicator because, for example, I found out at 34 that my AMH level was that of a 45-year-old woman. I had not done the test at 27 to know whether was it a drop or was I born with low AMH, right? So I think maybe a good marker to just do the test and then keep checking every few years.
What exactly defines egg quality? Like, what are we saying when we say egg quality? Which means it lowers the risks of genetic defect, or what exactly is?
You want to take it first, and I don't.
The ability of the egg to accept a sperm. That's one.
Fertilize.
And that is fertilize. And second thing is that as we grow older, again 35 is a kind of a cutoff. There could be some chromosomal breakdowns in the egg, due to which the offspring could have some genetic abnormalities.
Did you say 35 and older? No. I also froze my eggs. When I was 37. No one told me that. But
So it's not an absolute cutoff, but generally, if I have to speak loosely, it's 35.
It's an average.
So, yeah.
It's not true for everything.
Okay. I will not make this about me.
I was 36 and apparently I have really good quality.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'm using
now
them.
I've already crossed 40. I'm again freezing my egg.
Fantastic.
Low.
Go for it.
I think you guys mentioned about AMH. Is that the only technology available to check the egg quality? Is there any other tests? And deeper? Because I think sometimes some doctors say if you have thyroid or PCOS, your AMH count may not be truly reflective of your quality effects. So is there any other?
You can do a sonography,
Ultrasound, yeah.
an ultrasound, which will tell you sort of the quantity of potentially of follicles, and you add it with an AMH, and then sort of a consultation. I think the three, unless there's something else together, is the best that will give you the right indication of where you are in your fertility level.
Yep.
I'm coming to you, Tamanna.
I have a non-medical question, and I think where you said you loved being pregnant. I struggled with low professional efficiency throughout my pregnancy in the first 7-8 months after my daughter was born, and I think that the amount I was hard on myself on low work output and I haven't met my targets, it was not my company, it was me being hard on myself. It was largely the fear of thinking about even a second one. I mean, how does, for anyone who's chosen to have one more, what changed that you said, let's do one more?
I mean, for me, I think, I started building my company when I was 21. I spent a good 20 years in working 14-hour days, traveling 3-4 days a week, giving my all to it. I think I came to a space, even with my first child, where I said, look, this is all great and I love what I'm doing. And I'm not willing to make the trade-off of saying that I'm not willing to give up my professional career to have a child, but I believe I can do both. Now, if you are a founder and the owner of your own business, you have frankly more flexibility to do that. You can make people work around your schedule. Use that leverage and work the way you need to work. So, for example, even the second time around, I took a very clear decision and said that, look, I've now been the managing director of my company for 20 years. I'm now moving myself to an executive chairperson role. Not because I was having a second child, but because I wanted to do that. It just, I happened to time it at the same time that I was having, my twins. And I think it's okay to not be at your optimum performance best. Even if you are able to contribute, add value at a 60% of your optimum best, it's perfectly fine. And it's just a matter of a year. It's a matter of 2 years. In the larger perspective of 100 years, which most of us are going to live because of anti-aging and life longevity. What is 2 years? It's nothing. But I can only tell you that, at least for me, the 3 at home is a madhouse. It's a circus, and it's amazingly entertaining.
Tamanna,
Oh, sorry, I have 2 questions. The first one being,
little louder.
oh, sorry. I think that I just had my child, just one, and to a certain degree it was a miracle pregnancy for us in that sense, because I went through these tests and it was more like, yeah, this is not happening naturally. And it did happen. And we wanted a second one, and the doctor was again saying that we are at that phase where you may be more successful with increasing IVF like that. I think when we discuss it with the family or just like a broader audience, I just wanted to get your perspective. Did you guys ever experience like a kind of, did you feel like it was a taboo or something that to be shy about, that it's through IVF? Was that ever a thing that you experienced, and how did you really tackle it?
Yeah, so I'll actually start. So when I was researching about Luma, and I wanted to see if the gaps that I was seeing was beyond what I felt. We wanted to meet women, and what we realized is that women don't want to talk about this. There is a taboo. So it's basically, I think, suffer in silence and then celebrate the pregnancy. That's what we saw across. And that's actually something that we believe should change. It is perfectly normal to use IVF to get pregnant. There's nothing like naturally conceived. Like if your knee doesn't work, you don't say your knee is not naturally able to, you have to do a knee replacement, right? I mean, it's normal. So yeah, there's definitely a taboo. It is changing. For example, when I used to talk about the fact that I'm going through IVF, I know a lot of friends were going through it, but they didn't speak about it. But I guess it's up to the person to sort of share.
Yeah, I feel like that part of the process is also equally as overwhelming, right? Like just
To keep it,
having
yeah.
feedback and being like, what do I do? And this is reality.
So I think there are also lots of myths associated with getting an IVF done. Like a lot of people tell you you'll become a psycho because you're just injected with so much hormones that you go nuts.
Yeah, people say that.
I mean, a lot of women told me, it's going to take a toll on your emotional well-being. None of that should happen. I think you just have to keep going on with your normal life. You'll have to. There are some gifts. At least there was from my end. I mean, I had to give up a bunch of things. I forgot to mention coffee as well. But it was
all the good things.
Psycho, and there's no taboo. I mean, it's a means to an end, honestly speaking.
Yeah.
So just stay focused on what you want to achieve, and how does it matter how you get there?
Just adding something onto that. It's like when you're delivering, people call it a normal delivery or a C-sec. I mean, these are words. There's nothing normal and abnormal about a C-sec. Right? It's just these are words which have been traditionally used. I mean, if, for example, anybody is not able to have a second child naturally, it could be because the guy's sperm is not great quality, right?
Yeah.
Who's asking that
Most
question?
often than not.
Right? Nobody's asking that question. So the assumption is if you have to go through IVF, oh, it must be the woman who's deficient in some way. Now, it's up to us to either condition ourselves to this nonsense people are saying, or it's up to us to correct the myths, like Sakshi said. To say, look, hey, it may not be me, it may be him. It could be either one of us. It doesn't matter. The point is you want a child. The child, when you're happy and loving and celebrating their 20th birthday, is not wondering, did I come through IVF or did I come through natural pregnancy? It makes no difference, right?
Yeah.
So I would only say embrace it. We are sitting here openly having a conversation about something because none of us feel embarrassed or ashamed of something we did, right? It's the same way we all wear glasses because our eyes don't work so well. Sometimes your ovaries don't work so well. You take some help and you move on.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
I think the idea is also to de-link this whole idea of women thinking it's their fallibility if they can't,
Absolutely.
linking their self-esteem
That's right.
to their productivity and reproductive ability.
Correct.
And I think the long-term job is to smash that
Absolutely.
in any way that we can.
I think adding to Amira's point also, I'm a Purva, I met some of you here, I did care delivery. So one of the things that I used to previously work with a company which was trying to make women's healthcare more inclusive and designed for everybody, and we used to face this a lot where people would say natural conception, and to make it more inclusive we had it as a part of our care protocols that we don't prefer to natural versus unnatural. We used to say somebody conceived via timed intercourse or somebody conceived via IVF. There is nothing natural because every path to parenthood is natural. Like whatever suits everybody's needs is natural. So that's how we tried to change the narrative, calling it timed intercourse instead of natural conception.
Yeah. So needed.
I think she had a second question.
Lots of questions. Yeah,
Can I go ahead with my second?
sure.
Taking from that, the fact that it really did work naturally the first time and it was stressful, but the baby came along. I had a very stressful job in that sense. I mean, I'm a wealth manager working for 10 years. I love my job. But there's a part of me that's so scared to go back. I mean, considering all that we went through to have our baby and things like that, I'm not being able to kind of step out the door. So how do you guys, I mean, how do you approach it? Any thoughts?
And why do you fear like going back to your work?
And just
The
that
confidence.
I'm not there. Not that
Maybe
I
so.
Mentally or okay.
I live with my in-laws, but just that mental barrier sort of.
You mean confidence? You mean
Child is so precious that I don't know.
Mothers
No, I meant like, is it because you don't want to leave the baby as yet, or
I don't know what the way to approach it is. Like I keep feeling worried, because I know what we went through to have
yeah, of course.
baby, but at some point you gotta get past it. So how did you approach it?
I would say take as much time as you need before you go back, because like Amira mentioned, it's honestly just 1 or 2 years in a very, very long journey and a very, I would say, illustrious career that you will build for yourself. So just have confidence that, whenever you're mentally and emotionally and physically ready to go back and dive into the deep end, there will be enough and more waiting for you. So just enjoy this period with your baby and with yourself, because motherhood is such a precious journey as well. So just enjoy this time with your baby, with yourself, and really cherish this moment, because you're going to miss it because kids grow up so fast, right? And you can go back and be back in the wealth management industry whenever you choose to, because I think out there they're hungry for hiring talent back, right? So you should not worry about that. Just enjoy this time and go back only when you're ready.
Can I give you a slightly contrarian perspective?
I want to add that, I met Tamanna when she was 8 months pregnant. She booked an appointment with me in this sort of difficult to get to location, and I had no idea that she was 8 months pregnant. And she wanted so much to meet and discuss what is going to happen to her career. So I know that it matters to her.
So just as an alternative perspective, I feel staying out of the workspace is not so much about the income. It's not so much about anything else. It's about the lack of confidence, the loss of confidence that happens when you're not in the workspace. See, for most of us, we're also intellectual beings. we get stimulated by being out there. We have to build confidence, we have to hustle, we have to do lots of things when you're out there in the world. When you're in your cocoon in home, slowly, very subconsciously, it also starts to erode, right? And that confidence of being able to go in the world and hustle sometimes starts feeling like, I don't know if I can anymore. So my theory is actually get back to work as soon as possible. Because you stay out of the workforce too long, that home cocoon is too easy to get used to. And it's very hard to actually get back into the workforce again, not because the opportunities will not be there, to her point, you'll get the opportunity, but your own confidence, own things, all of this can become a challenge, right? So the only point about you saying about how do you leave your child, and such a precious child, I just feel like, you know, we've seen and we've all heard about helicopter parenting and tiger moms and, you know, all the different words that are attributed to a lot of us. But the question is, where does it come from, right? It comes from an anxiety to trust that your child can be independently taken care of by somebody else but you. Now that depends on the ecosystem. If you have an ecosystem that you trust, mother-in-law, father-in-law, husband, nannies, didis, whatever it is, if you have that ecosystem, somewhere letting that child be without you will build more confidence in that child and independence in that child. So versus thinking that you're doing something wrong, maybe you can think about how it helps the child. And if you're happy in your mind space, working, thriving, hustling, your child will see you happier and will feel that energy in that. So I can only tell you that if you truly believe that you are a better mother, a better woman, a better wife, a better everything, if you've got all facets of you, then I think you'll see the benefit of it and not the negative.
Just to adding to her, and I want to give Tamanna some kind of a, like, I took a sabbatical for 4.5 years post my pregnancy. And when I got back to the workforce, I was not getting a job because of the pregnancy part of it. But when I got a job, I think I was more driven than ever. And having said that, it's been 11 years now, and I think I'm thriving much better than what I did initially before my pregnancy. So I think it's just a state of mind, and you'll get through it. It's not going to be difficult at all.
So I had a question about when you decided to sort of take that embryo and get started on that pregnancy journey. What changed? Because fortunately for me, I have a bunch of elder sisters and they've warned me about what happens if you were too late. So I am here more from a state of fear already. What should I do? And I am also at the cusp of this, very, very important time in my career, and I absolutely don't want to miss out on any part of it. So I want to understand, how did you decide to get started in that pregnancy? Because you did it a little bit later. So now I'm realizing that that's also an option. But would you advise going back in time? Would you think that, okay, maybe earlier you could have done the same thing? Because
Are you talking about egg freezing, embryo freezing, or IVF?
Getting pregnant.
Getting
pregnant. No, please
I
go.
can go.
Go.
I wouldn't change anything. I had a kid when I was 40. In fact, when I was on the delivery room, my doctor was announcing that, look at her, she's doing a delivery at 40. And I was like, I don't know what's so big a deal about it. But I realized as I met more moms that, and I went, especially when my kid went to school, that I was probably the oldest mom in the class. But I wouldn't change anything, candidly. The only thing I'd change is I would freeze my eggs. Because then I would have had the opportunity to have my second.
I think honestly there is, I think with the technology that's available today, you have the ability and flexibility not to be controlled by a biological clock if you create this insurance policy earlier. And then obviously there is the reality that your womb has to still be in good shape if you want to carry the child. So I think we do have to be cautious and alert around, there is an age to it, but it's not as inflexible as it used to be. There's far more flexibility today. So I would not have probably gotten pregnant earlier because I feel there are huge benefits to being an older parent. There are huge benefits to being a younger parent. There is no right answer. It just depends on you, your stage of life, and what you are emotionally ready for. So if I had a child when I was 28 or 29, when I didn't really want to, I didn't feel like it, I don't think I would have been a great mother, because I would have had FOMO, I would have been wanting to go out somewhere, I want to work, whatever I want to do. But having a child when I was ready to have a child means I get to the opportunity to be the best mother I can be. So I think it's very personal, and honestly, there should be no sense of pressure. Just create your options.
So I think this session has given me a lot to mull over, but I just wanted to understand why we've spoken about what women go through in their fertility journey. I wanted to understand, is there something similar, or I'm not really sure how this happens for men, and is there how there is egg freezing and to sort of protect the quality of eggs or to sort of preserve it? Is there something that Luma also offers for men?
Yeah, so definitely, I think, when I started researching about Luma, I realized that 50% of fertility issues are actually from males. And there is God's been a little kinder because there's age on their side with regards to, sperm health doesn't deteriorate at 30, 35, etc. But what we are hearing now, especially in India with air pollution, smoking, drinking, etc., definitely a lot of male fertility issues have come. And what we do at Luma is two things. I think, sperm analysis testing, really AI-driven sort of insights. Second is sperm freezing, and you'll be surprised so many men come to us and they want to freeze their sperm and they are looking at it long term. And third, of course, there are medical procedures for men who have deeper issues, and those are also something that we do at Luma.
I think we had one more question. Okay, and I'll come back to you.
I actually have 3 parts to my question. Quickly, they're all interrelated. So, I've been hearing everything. Given all of this, what is the percentage of success, let's say for someone who's freezing and an egg closer to, upwards of 35 or closer to 40? What is the percentage of success over there, given everything else, every other parameter that we're talking about, lifestyle and things like that? Is there a data around it? Secondly, what I'm also learning that there is a huge lack of awareness, even today, right? I for sure did not know about. Well, back then, my sister-in-law did ask us that, do you want to freeze your eggs? And I had no idea what that meant. I never thought about it, never really. I wish I had and researched a little bit about it. I have a son, never thought about having another one. Now, want to have another one, but it's too late. You want to focus on your career. You also want to everything else comes into play. And the third part is that it's still a very expensive process. Do you think that it's going to be something which will be accessible in the near future for a larger number of people? Because there are a lot of women out there, and from what I'm understanding, it's only going to increase.
Yep.
With the lifestyles changing and the kind of lifestyle that people are getting into. So you can choose to answer.
Yeah, I'll start and please add in. I think the success rates for egg freezing is very similar to those of IVF. I think if you see global numbers and you compare to India numbers, typically 60 to 70% success rate is sort of normal. Live birth rate are of course much lower, which is having the child. So there is a funnel that happens. When you freeze eggs, then you make embryos and you transfer embryos, and then a pregnancy happens, and then you sustain the pregnancy and have live birth. But in the data that we saw, women who chose to freeze their eggs earlier, of course, ended up having much more success later on. So definitely data points out to that. In fact, in US, 50% of cycles are actually egg freezing cycles. Because there, to your second question, the awareness is great, right? And I think India, awareness is not there. So definitely, agree with you. And one of the things that Luma is doing actively is that we actually do complimentary AMH test at corporates, at events, and we give a report which actually maps your age to AMH. So x-axis age, y-axis AMH, where you are, what's your predictive decline, compared to Indian women where you are, and what do you fall under. You may be in a long-term focus because your AMH is great, and you may want to think about it after 3 years. So I think that awareness is, we're trying to really, be there. And I think to your third point, sorry, I forgot. The price. Yeah, and price, I feel like because IVF and the lab and the technology that it takes, right? It is inherently a procedure that is expensive. So is egg freezing. But I do think that India's one of the lowest in terms of price points if you see where India's price point is versus globally. And I think with EMI coming in, with interesting insurance integrations coming in, I do see that sort of penetrating market in a better way. For example, so many women at Luma choose to do egg freezing either with their company, where their company is funding it, or they actually take EMI, which I think is a very smart choice because you can actually avail that. And egg freezing is what, like 2 lakhs approx, 2.5 lakhs max, and then freezing every year. Which I think a lot of women and women in this sort of segment can afford, right?
I actually don't think it's expensive, I'm sorry, because we are very comfortable today going and spending large amounts of money on clothes. We are very comfortable on spending
Holidays.
money to go on holidays. We are very comfortable spending money on buying a car. I mean, to do one of the most important things in your life, something which is probably going to be your biggest gift. I mean, 2-3 lakhs feels to me like really cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about people in rural India who just cannot afford it, but people largely in the top 20, 30, 40 cities of our country who are earning and have financial income. It's not expensive.
Actually, most corporates today are, because you have an increasing workforce, employment women are including IVF and egg freezing.
You have water?
So you should tell your employers to change the insurance plan.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's the way.
Right. On that note, I am going to wind up. Our speakers, our panelists are still around, so you can ask your questions and get to exchange some notes with them. But I promised them that I'd close on time and someone's going to a coughing fit. But I loved that everyone was willing to ask and opened up about, asking or sharing some of your apprehensions, your life journeys, your thoughts, because I think it's a really important topic to have explored and at the intersection of work, career, choice. And I'm really grateful to all three of you for also opening up and sharing. And that's why, today's conversation was really about that. We didn't want to make it too business heavy. It was more about really bringing these phenomenal women leaders recognized really at the national level in India to come and share some very personal stories. So I hope you'll take that conversation ahead, and thank all of you for being here and also for contributing to this wonderful dialogue today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.